meat and potatoes. Not just a deep dive, it's the deepest dive into Minnesota Vikings football.
And welcome into Purple Daily Meat and Potatoes, where we do an extremely deep dive on the previous week's Vikings game. It is Judd, it is AJ producing as always, and Forno, who is going to take us through a few topics off of what he saw on the film from Sunday's Vikings victory. But before we get to that, let's talk about our friends at Nicolay Law. Quick shout out to them because they are the personal injury law firm of all shows, of course, on this platform. Nicolay Law and Russ right there know that when you or a loved one gets injured, ordinary life, it can come to a stop and things can get complicated. During that time, insurance companies are likely to pressure you. They don't care if you get better. They don't care if your medical bills are piling up, and they don't care that you may not be able to work. But guess what? Russ Nicolay and his team absolutely do care. They've seen every play the insurance companies have, and they'll make sure you get the compensation that you deserve after an accident. So if you've been injured, get Minnesota's local award-winning injury lawyers. Get Nicolay. Start your path to winning at nicolaylaw.com or give them a call, 1-855-NICOLAY. That's nicolaylaw.com, NICOLET law.com. Forno, what's up, man? Vikings again coming off a big win. Chicago Bears aren't good, but the Vikings did take care of business, basically blew them out. And I want to start with this. I want to start with the fact that while the offense ended up being fine, looked like Sam Darnold's accuracy, and I saw you tweet about this as well on the social channels, looked like his accuracy was a little bit off. What did you see there when you went back and watched as far as the footwork goes, or just the mechanics of what perhaps led to a few, at least early on, it seemed like, overthrows?
So there's a lot of different ways that this can kind of go about. And the sense I got the first go around, I'm gonna keep doing an even bigger deep dive to try and identify it. It felt like a combination of things. It felt like, one, the offensive line was getting pushed back, and then he didn't feel like he could step in. When you don't step in, that's the number one way to be able to sail a ball, because if you ask your arm to do too much of the work, you're going to overcompensate, and that a lot of times causes the ball to sail. Also, he didn't really rush things per se, but he was kind of stubborn where, hey, I don't have the cleanest surroundings, but I know I can still make this throw. It's a level of arm arrogance, which you kind of want your quarterback to have to a certain extent, but you don't want them to completely have. You want them to be able to control it. You want them to be able to kind of mitigate some of those things by, like, obviously you have a guy like Brett Favre, you have a guy like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. They know that they can, hey, if I need to, I can just whip it in there and it's no problem. I have that arm ability, but the understanding and awareness to utilize it in a controlled setting, to be smart and calculated with it, is significantly more important than just being able to do it. You have to be able to utilize it. It's like giving a 12-year-old a Porsche. A 12-year-old can have the fastest car in the world, but that doesn't mean they know how to use it. And when you have the ability to, with this kind of arm talent that Darnold has, I mean, it's probably like an 8.5 to 9 out of 10. It's a really, really good arm that you can do a lot of things with, where Kirk Cousins is probably like a 7. You can win with the 7, but you'd much prefer to have an 8.5 or a 9. So I think that's one of the things, like, you're kind of seeing the differences between the two. And I think Darnold has done a really good job lately of being more calculated and controlling. And I think one of the reasons, this is just kind of me thinking off the cuff,
Okay.
didn't really respect that Bears defense too much. So he knew, hey, if I make a throw where I hey, maybe I can't step into it, but if I throw it, it's not going to hurt me anyways. And I know I have the guys on the back end that can help me and be able to make some of these plays. Like, I can kind of understand that. But when you face really good football teams, which the Vikings are going to do the next 3 weeks, you have to be a lot more careful in making some of those mistakes. Because one of the weird things about the Bears, they were 4-2, and they were a botched Hail Mary away from being 5-2. That started I think it's now an 8-game losing streak. It's just bonkers how things have just cratered for them. But it's not like they were this awful football team. They've still been competitive throughout most of this losing streak. And Darnold just needs to stay patient, take a deep breath, and just play within himself, because when he's played within himself, that's how you get 5 touchdowns against the Atlanta Falcons.
And you mentioned, like, the arm talent. let's talk about maybe the decision making by Sam Darnold, because we did see a pick where some people, I know the discourse has been like, you know what, I'm glad, because I'd rather have him try that throw rather than check it down and we turn it over or have to kick the ball or whatever. It's that, risk reward type of thing. But also people are kind of questionable about the kind of like shovel passes, sometimes even with the left hand that we saw. Can you talk about that? Whether that was maybe actual good improvisation, because if you don't do one of those shovel passes to kind of just get the ball out, you're almost taking a sack guaranteed. You're saving that yardage. But the other part is you do have there's a giant risk when you just kind of let the ball go willy-nilly like that, right, Forno?
Yeah. So let's talk about the interception. Anybody who's mad about the interception should really take a chill pill. It's 4th down. The play's busted. There's nowhere to go with the football. You throw it up hoping that one of your guys, because you have 2 over there, can come down the football. It didn't happen. You're turning the ball over anyways. Now, instead of they're going to be 15 yards farther down the field. Win. You're giving your guy a chance on 4th down. Now, if that's a 2nd down play, bozo ball. But this is where context matters and situation is really important. You did it on 4th down. Not a big deal. And to kind of remind me, the other point, the shovel pass, right?
Kind of the shovel passes just to get the ball out. Yeah.
So there's to me, there's 2 schools of thought here. One, it's the Brett Favre school of thought where, hey, I can always make a play. And there's good and bad to that school of thought, because if you always try to make a play, you're going to end up making negative ones in turn. But you can also make ones that will prevent negative plays. So when Darnold is doing that shovel pass, it's objectively good because he knows that there's open space that he can just throw to and it's going to be incomplete. The mitigated risk that you're taking is that in the process of getting the ball, he loses it because it's not a normal throwing motion. The Cincinnati Bengals had this happen to them this past week. We've had this epidemic of players dropping the ball at the 1 yard line because they're celebrating too early. This guy wasn't celebrating. He was moving the ball between arms and he dropped it. And that's the risk that you take when you make some of these moves. Now, how big of a risk is it? I don't personally think it's that big, but anytime you're moving the ball in a non-usual way for a quarterback, quarterbacks don't take the ball like this and then try to do a shovel pass like it's basketball. They just don't do that. That's not a part of your normal practice. It's not a part of your normal repertoire. So when you do that, you are taking an added risk of fumble because you're doing something that is against the grain, against what you normally do. Now, the result is great, but the process is one where you can be, hey, you know what, dude, let's not risk you potentially mishandling the football and just take the sack. It would have only been 3 or 4 yards. Yeah, 3 or 4 yards is important in the NFL, but sometimes it's better to just take the small loss than to potentially take a substantial one. So that's kind of the risk reward that you have there. Darnold has seen some risks happen that have not gone his way when he's been trying to throw the ball. The throw it against the Cardinals where he basically threw it at the feet of the defender where the defender might have been able to intercept it. You have to throw it away much, much better than that.
Yeah.
And I don't have an issue with the kind of the shovel pass because of where it ended up. There was no bear anywhere near you.
The throw at the feet of the defender against Cardinals was actually far more egregious than the pick that he threw against the Bears because of circumstances. And the pick that they threw against the Bears was going nowhere. It wasn't going to get returned. The throw at the feet of the defender, actually, I think if you're O'Connell and you're judging risks, you hated that a lot more, and it didn't get picked off than you did the actual pick. And you know what? In fairness to Sam too, since the 5 picks in 2 games against the Colts and Jaguars, he has done, and I'm sure it's with some assistance as well, but they have done a much better job of him protecting the ball. It's been 1 pick since then. It was the one against the Bears, and so that Jaguars game was off the charts, but they have done, and he's done a much better job. There are still some throws he makes where it's ooh, but that being said, I think you feel much more confident now than you did about a month ago or a month and a half ago.
Yeah, 100%. It's about being smart within context. Context will always be king whenever we're having a conversation about anything. Just look at the 2022 Vikings where everybody was calling them frauds. I still think the word fraudulent is a little bit too far. especially because the idea of the situational masters is continuing with this Minnesota Vikings squad in droves. They are dominating situational football, and that is helping them win on the margins, but they're also dominating in other facets of the game. So that context is always going to be important when we're having a conversation about anything, because if you don't have context and you just look at like a box score, Jared Goff threw for almost 500 yards against the Bills. Well, you could argue the last 21 minutes were technically garbage time. And that's kind of some of the conversations that we're having here. You have to have the context in order to completely understand the whole picture.
So let's talk about on Monday night. Let's talk about the run game as well, because that clearly got on track, partially because O'Connell, to a large degree at times committed to it. But what did you see on film from Aaron Jones as far as he appears to be, and he's had a nice year. The fumbles have been a problem. It's been a while, again, much like with Darnold, but he's had a nice year. But that being said, seemed like, although he didn't have a 100-yard game against the Bears, he had a very effective night. What did you see from the run game as far as the blocking goes and as far as Jones's progression or game itself went?
So it's a multifaceted thing. Judd, I know you didn't get a chance to watch the TV broadcast, but one thing they mentioned that has not gotten a lot of play, and I haven't heard anybody talk to him about it.
Sure.
Apparently, the extra protection that Jones was wearing because of the rib injury, theoretically was causing those fumbles.
Okay.
So
Seifert brought that up a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been broached, but yeah, that was causing him some problems. That went back to the last game when he put the ball on the ground twice and lost the one. That definitely was a topic of, is that flak jacket or protection causing him problems?
Yeah, and once I came off, you haven't seen an issue since. One of my big issues with the run game was I actually was really frustrated with Kevin O'Connell and his usage of the run game. And you have Gervon Dexter out. They're already one of the worst run defenses in terms of success rate and EPA per play in the National Football League. Why aren't you trying to run the ball more consistently? In the first half, 37 plays, 10 runs. And you had Darnold like missing here and there. And it was almost like a switch flip. He's like, all right, screw it. Let's just run the football. And you know what? Then they were starting to gash. It wasn't like 15, 20-yard runs. It was like 7, 8. Just remember that Philadelphia Eagles game last year where DeAndre Swift just kept getting 5, 6, 7 yards out of pop. That's demoralizing for a defense. That can just absolutely be worse than, hey, one play, they scored an 80-yard touchdown pass. Like, that's one play. But you have a 16-play drive where all you're doing is running the football consistently, successful. Like, that's demoralizing. Like, it's like trying to play the Army football team. Every game, they'll have like a 16-play, 90-yard drive that goes 14 minutes. Incredibly demoralizing for a defense. I wish that O'Connell had it in him, and I think he does, but he just chooses not to use it, to really focus on the run game. Because he now has a running back he can trust in Aaron Jones. I believe he trusts Cam Akers. He does not trust Ty Chandler, which, based on his performance so far this year, I get it. It's understandable. I thought Chandler would take a big jump, and he didn't. A lot of us thought he was going to take that kind of jump. But when you have the stable of backs where you trust them and believe them, just run the football. Just run duo, and just run it down people's throats. And
to what extent do you think that potentially, maybe the argument on the other side of things is why you aren't seeing him go to that running game as heavily as maybe you would have liked on Monday night? It's the Bears. You earlier that day, I believe you found out that like a division rival, like you can see how easily a team's running game can get kind of thrown askew by having somebody be out for the year with David Montgomery. But they have 3 very tough games coming up. Aaron Jones isn't a spry young buck. They have the playoffs that at the time they knew they were already going to make. Now it's a matter of like, they're controlling their own destiny, and we understand that, but maybe potentially saving him in a sense. So he does have those bursts in him, those bigger runs potentially in him, and that health in him for the next 3 games and whatever playoff run. Or do you think that is maybe a non-factor for Kevin O'Connell in that offense?
Oh, I'm sure it's a factor. Like now, the David Montgomery injury that you kind of referenced. Look, knee injuries can happen on any play at any time, even if you're doing everything right. Knee injuries are fluky in nature. Like, they can just happen because of circumstance, and there's nothing you can do about it. But I do think there's something to trying to save him. But I also think when you look at Kevin O'Connell, how he structures play calling, because I love him as a play caller. I think he's tremendous. His biggest weakness to me is abandoning the run game. And early on, you could see why Dalvin Cook was washed in 22. Alexander Madison was completely uninspiring in 2023. But now you have Jones, and Akers has been like better than expected. I don't think he's a starting level player, but I do think he's a solid number 2 to have behind Jones, give 30 to 40% of the snaps and give him like 10 touches a game. Like, that's a guy that can contribute and be something for you. So the fact that he continues to abandon the run based on kind of what we're seeing, AJ, I don't think it has anything to do with saving Aaron Jones.
Okay.
Your theory about trying to save Aaron Jones, I think, is a really good one. I just don't think it's how the game is being practiced right now, because Kevin O'Connell just continues to stray away from the run game because he wants to chase those explosives downfield, which, I mean, they're number 1 in explosive play rate in the National Football League. So it's hard to really argue with that, but you would like to see more from the run game because it has been good.
They are. It looks like one thing that O'Connell has changed a little bit is he's given Jones a little bit more of a blow at times in series and rotating Akers in now. There was a while where it would be like the first 2 to 3 series would go to Jones, and then they would bring Akers in for his series.
Mm-hmm.
Last couple of games, I think they've started to rotate Akers in if the series is continuing to get Jones, just a bit more of a rest. But yeah, I mean, I'm convinced if you're going to win playoff games, you're going to need to, if not rely on the run, it's going to need to be a threat. Go back to that. I think it was the first and only Justin Jefferson touchdown catch, the 7-yard touchdown catch on Monday night. If you go back, they basically did a great job with the run in that series, and they used play action then, which the Bears had to respect. Like, that's the thing is, I love play action. Play action's great, but you got to take it seriously. And if you know that you're going to have the quarterback hunting and play action is just a little bit of seasoning, but it's not taken seriously, that costs you there. So I think there's a very big discussion to be had about how you win playoff games and the fact that you don't have to love the run, you don't have to rely on it, but you need it there as a weapon. And on Monday, I thought ultimately by the end of the game, they had weaponized the run enough. And yeah, the Bears aren't good, but to your point, they were at one point off to a decent start. Like, they're not a complete dumpster fire. So I thought they did a good job of incorporating the run game at times in a way that I could see potentially being a formula when we get to the postseason.
Formula in the postseason should be 21 personnel and utilize CJ Ham.
Sure.
Just hammer people. And then you can change it to 12 personnel, flip Ham with Josh Oliver, and you can just hammer people.
Yep.
The one good thing about the Vikings is if they end up getting that 1 seed, which at this point is incredibly viable, just win. You win 3 games, you get the 1 seed. It's basically that simple. It's about a 98% chance with that strength of victory tiebreaker. The Eagles, they have a slight chance, but it's not great, especially because the Vikings wins are going to be against 3 playoff teams.
That right.
And the Eagles are going to play non-playoff teams, but it's an all-encompassing record. So I'm kind of looking at it, and if you have to play games at US Bank, you don't have to worry about the weather being a factor. You don't have to worry about only running the football, but adding that extra weapon is huge, because if they stop the pass, well, what are you going to do? Oh, we'll have to run the football. Oh, but we can't. The Vikings have proven that they can, and I think continuing to do so is a net benefit for you now and in the future.
So I got one more thing. I want to flip to the defensive side of the ball. But before I do that, I want to talk to you about our friends at the Butcher and the Boar in the North Loop, a great gathering space for Southern-style hospitality, great for family and business gatherings as well. Brunch on weekends, happy hour 4 to 6 every day. And how about this? Every Thursday, prime rib night. That comes with a wedge salad, lobster mac and cheese, a loaded baked potato, and an ice cream sundae. You can take your whole offensive line there. And guess what? They are going to be very, very happy. And so check that out again every Thursday night until it's sold out. Prime rib night, Butcher and the Boar, North Loop. If you're going to a Wolves game, it's a great place to stop pre-game for a great dinner. Jonathan Greenard. So I want to ask you about him now, because it feels like the free agent trade, I guess. Danielle Hunter for Greenard, Forno. It's worked out marvelously for both teams. And Greenard didn't get off to a great start sack-wise. He was playing fine, but he didn't get, I think he had 1 sack through the first couple of games or so, and then he had 3 against his former Texans team, and he has taken off since then. Hunter, if I'm not mistaken, is second in the league. Greenard is tied for third or fourth. But what have you seen just from what he's brought and the fit that he has been schematically here? Because it feels like when I watch him, he is as good a fit as Brian Flores could have gotten, and lots of guys are too. But just to pinpoint Greenard, what have you seen from his schematic fit here?
Oh my gosh. When they signed him and I really dived into how the Texans were using him, like, yeah, there's a reason why they let Hunter go and brought this guy in. Yeah, Hunter is a better player. Greenard's a better fit. One of the things with how Brian Flores kind of has constructed this defense, you got to get pressure quick. You got to get off the ball. Greenard is one of the fastest off the ball in the National Football League. Hunter was not. Hunter was very slow and methodical off the ball. But you know what? Great football player. So when you kind of look at the two, okay, Greenard makes the most sense. Plus, Greenard can drop into coverage, and having that kind of flexibility and versatility is really big with how Brian Flores likes to play football. One of the reasons why Dallas Turner was the pick over a guy that I loved in Chop Robinson, who's been great for the Miami Dolphins this year. Having the ability to play both positions, even just a little bit with Greenard. I think Turner could probably be a stand-up linebacker if he really wanted to, similar to Andrew Van Ginkel, which, let's be real, Dallas Turner's in the Andrew Van Ginkel role when he's on the field. So having that ability has just been so huge. Plus, his run defense has arguably been better than him rushing the passer, because he's able to get off the ball incredibly quick, crash, slant up against the offensive line. There was one play where they were running a wide zone to the opposite side of Greenard. He got off the ball so quickly, cut across Trent Williams' face, and got a tackle behind the line of scrimmage. Like, this dude has been incredible. What's funny is he's only 2 years younger than Danielle Hunter, but he is younger. Danielle Hunter is an anomaly in so many different ways, and we would love to have him on this defense, but would I trade him for Greenard? No, because Greenard is arguably the second most important player on this defense. I still think the most important player is Blake Cashman. I could gush about him all day, but Greenard's ability to do everything, do it consistently, and be versatile has been such a massive benefit for how Brian Flores likes to call this defense, and it gives him the flexibility to do a lot of different things. And being able to do a lot of different things builds into Kevin O'Connell's theory of the illusion of complexity. Brian Flores is doing the same thing. Hey, I'm going to show you this. I'm going to give you all this window dressing and simulated pressures. Oh, I'm just going to do drop 8 Tampa 2. Yeah, but if you have to think as a quarterback, be like, okay, a second and a half into your drop back, you've now figured out, okay, it's Tampa 2 drop 8. Now I have to find somebody open. And by the time you find somebody open, guess who's in your face? Greenard, Van Ginkel, Ward, Jones, Cashman. And those little window dressings make a really big impact, especially against quarterbacks who aren't used to them, especially against rookie quarterbacks.
Right.
Caleb Williams had an awful game on Monday. We can talk about, oh, he made this play or that play. He stunk. He was missing guys high school wide.
He was scrambling from guys that weren't coming. Once Turner or once Greenard got the strip sack, he was never the same. He couldn't get rid of that ball, or he just started to run. Like the one play where he improvised and scrambled, and then threw across his body into the end zone, and it could have been picked by Harrison Smith. He literally jumped a guy that wasn't there. He like hopped up in the air like he was hopping a defender. There was nobody there. He just hopped. He was freaked out. All right, AJ, let's get to the meat and potatoes questions for 4-0 for this week. What do we got?
All right, so the first one here is going to come as soon as I pull it up here from Braziello on YouTube. He says, hey guys, I know the Bears are going to Bears, but can you break down the 4th down stop on the toss play to DeAndre Swift? Was it a bad play call by Chicago? Good play call by Flores? What do the Vikings bring to make that turnover on downs and stop the Bears in their tracks?
It's hard to call it a bad play call because it nearly worked.
Okay.
When you call any run play, it's always going to be about who does their job and who wants it more. And especially when it's short yardage, it's going to come down to who wants it more. And this is where having dominant trench play can really make a huge impact on the game. This is what I talked about earlier. The Vikings are winning in the margins. Their fourth down percentage in the National Football League, their defense is first in the NFL in a fourth down percentage. They are, I believe, is fifth in third down percentage. They don't allow you to stay on the football field. They do a great job of getting off. And I think that's been a really important factor. And with that toss play, what it showed was, hey, you're allowing DeAndre Swift, who was injured, by the way. He could not move nearly as well as you wanted him to, which, let's be real, maybe they shouldn't have called a toss play with DeAndre Swift. But Jerry Tillery just crossed the face of his lineman, and Jalen Redmond was right behind, and they got the stuff. It's essentially who wants it more. And the Vikings proved that they wanted it more than the Bears did from a multitude of players. And I think they have something in Jalen Redmond. I think Jerry Tillery might be worth bringing back next year in a reserve role. As long you still have to find a way to upgrade at least one of those positions. But there is a lot of positive that you're seeing from Tillery, from Bullard, from Redmond on a week-to-week basis, where if you add one high-end starter, all of a sudden you feel really good about that defensive line room. And we have seen literally nothing from Levi Drake Rodriguez, who flashed all during training camp, who flashed during the preseason. Maybe there's something there long-term with him. There is talent on this defensive line, and they're playing their roles really well, which is where Tillery ended up getting the game ball, because there was that second fourth down in the second quarter, AJ, where Tillery was the one who broke up that one. He didn't get the tackle, but he was the catalyst behind getting the stop because he got the penetration. He got into the backfield, forced DeAndre Swift to slow down, and then that's when the gang tackling began. Tillery is a bust of a first-round pick. But you're not asking him to be this game wrecker. You're asking him to play a role on this defensive line, and he's done a good job of it. All these guys have. And it's that do your job mentality, and it's working. So you add a premium player to that kind of working mentality, all of a sudden defensive line doesn't feel like it's a weakness anymore.
Next one.
Yeah, the final one comes from Ryan W., who emails into the show. He says, on a slightly shorter turnaround for the Vikings and a potential question at quarterback. Keep in mind, this came a day ago when we maybe had less information. But he says, Geno Smith is hurt, might not play, not sure what the quarterback situation will be out in Seattle. Does that help or hurt the Vikings? And he says, it's a lesser skilled QB, so it's easier for them to maybe deal with in the game, but also there's less tape on him. So you're never going to know exactly what a backup maybe can offer. We've seen Kevin O'Connell kind of coach up Joshua Dobbs, Nick Mullins, and have them look like passable NFL quarterbacks at times. Obviously not the same quarterback or coach over there in Seattle. What does this make Brian Flores do? Does he keep it simple? Do you have to kind of do a sample platter? Forno, what does that do for the Vikings on this kind of shorter week?
It's interesting because I don't know how hurt Geno Smith is. He's doing everything in practice.
Wait, are you telling me that an NFL team might be lying to the media about the severity of an injury?
I don't think they're lying.
Okay.
But I mean, he did injure his knee. He did miss the rest of the game. But they've been pretty open about, hey, he's going to do work this week, and we're hoping to have him on Sunday. They're not feeding you a bunch of crap where it's like, oh, like X, Y, or Z, like they need to be fined for lying about the injury report. Like how Tom Brady was on the injury report for what, 3 years straight with a shoulder, and
because they got in trouble for ignoring it.
Yeah,
they got turned in, and so Belichick would put 15 guys a week on there.
Yep,
and it meant nothing.
Yeah, so I don't think they're necessarily misleading us. I don't think they're necessarily saying, hey, this guy isn't hurt. Like Geno really did get hurt, but it's probably like a grade 1 MCL sprain, which sometimes you don't even have to miss a week. Now, grade 2 is what Jordan Love had, and you're supposed to miss 3 to 6. He missed just over 3 calendar weeks, but he ended up coming back against the Vikings in week 4, and we saw how immobile he was. If Smith really does have an MCL injury, man, he's going to be even less mobile. And he's in between Kirk and Sam Darnold as far as mobility. He's not as bad as Kirk, but he's not as good as Sam. He can move. He can make throws on the run. But the one thing that they don't have, any good interior offensive lineman. If you think the Vikings interior is bad, go watch a Seattle Seahawks game. It's atrocious. Now, they have a good left tackle in Charles Cross. When healthy, Abraham Lucas on the right side has been good, but he's been hurt a lot. So there are questions really across the entirety of that Seahawks offensive line. I think Brian Flores is going to sniff blood in the water like he's a shark, and he's going to attack Geno. And if Geno does what he normally does, then the Vikings might have to readjust and play a little bit more coverage because he can be really good against the blitz. But if he struggles to move around and you can get pressure up the middle, that could be a humongous factor in the Vikings being able to get the win. I expect him to play, and if he doesn't or he gets hurt, it's just going to be a slaughter because of Sam Darnold.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. All right, we will hopefully get a chance to talk about it next week. Obviously, it's Christmas week, but we are making plans to try to do a show, a little meat and potatoes for you coming off the Seattle game. And then, of course, the Vikings play Green Bay the following Sunday. I'm Judd. He's Forno. He's AJ. We'll talk to you later.